I am Joshua, 34 years old, and I stood paralyzed in my own driveway watching the taillights of a Porsche Cayenne disappear around the corner, leaving behind 3 confused children and a pile of luggage. Before I tell you how this moment ended with me handcuffed in an interrogation room facing a felony kidnapping charge, tell me where you are watching from in the comments below. It was supposed to be a Sunday of silence. As a landscape architect who works from home, my life is usually filled with the chaotic demands of clients, zoning boards, and contractors. Sunday was my sanctuary. It was the one day I turned my phone off, brewed a pot of expensive dark roast coffee, and sat on my back porch listening to the birds, not the buzzing of notifications. I had just poured that first cup, the steam rising in the crisp morning air, when the sound shattered my peace. It wasn't a normal car engine. It was the aggressive, throaty roar of a high-performance engine that screamed, "Look at me." I knew that sound. My stomach tightened instantly. It was the sound of my older brother, Caleb. I walked to the front window, peeling back the curtain just an inch. There it was, a brand new, obsidian black Porsche Cayenne idling in my driveway. It looked out of place in my modest neighborhood of mid-century ranch houses and sensible sedans. Caleb didn't just visit. Caleb made appearances, and he never appeared without needing something. I didn't even have time to get to the front door before I heard the car doors slamming. 1, 2, 3. Then the trunk popped. By the time I opened my front door, Caleb was already back in the driver's seat. Standing on my concrete walkway were my nephew and niece and nephew. Nathan, 14 years old, looked like he was trying to shrink into his hoodie. Lucas, 8, was clutching a Nintendo Switch like a lifeline. And little Chloe, 5 years old, was standing next to a suitcase that was almost bigger than she was, clutching a ragged stuffed rabbit by the ear. "Caleb," I shouted, stepping out onto the porch in my socks. "What is this?" The window of the Porsche rolled down smoothly. Caleb was wearing aviator sunglasses, despite it being partly cloudy. He flashed that $1,000,000 grin, the one that had charmed our parents, his teachers, and a string of bad investments for his entire life. "Surprise, Josh," he called out, his voice smooth and unbothered. "You're a lifesaver, man. Seriously, I owe you one." "Owe me what?" I walked down the steps, ignoring the cold concrete biting into my feet. "Caleb, what are the kids doing here? You didn't call." "I have plans." I didn't have plans, but that wasn't the point. It was the principle. "Something came up," Caleb said, checking his watch. "A heavy gold thing that probably cost more than my first car. Last-minute opportunity. Paris. Can't say no to the City of Lights, right? It's just for 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Depends on the vibe." "Paris," I repeated, the word tasting like ash. "You're going to Paris? Today? And you're just dropping them off?" "Don't be dramatic," he scoffed, revving the engine. "They're packed. Nathan knows the drill. There's cash in the side pocket of the blue bag for pizza tonight. Look, I gotta run or I'll miss the flight. First-class lounge waits for no man." "No!" I reached for the door handle, but it was locked. Caleb opened the door. "Cannot take them. I have a deadline this week. You can't just dump them here. You're their uncle, Josh. Step up. Be a man. Mom and Dad said you wouldn't mind." He didn't wait for my response. He didn't look at his children. He didn't say goodbye to Chloe, who was starting to whimper. He just shifted gears. The tires chirped against the asphalt, and he sped away, leaving a cloud of exhaust fumes drifting over my perfectly manicured lawn. I stood there for a full minute, my hands still reaching out into the empty air. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a mix of adrenaline and pure, unadulterated rage. I looked down at the kids. Lucas was still staring at his screen, but his knuckles were white. Chloe looked up at me, her eyes welling with tears. "Uncle Josh? Is Daddy coming back for dinner?" My throat closed up. I looked at Nathan. The teenager was staring at the ground, his jaw set tight, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He looked humiliated. He knew. At 14, he knew exactly what this was. "Come inside," I said, my voice softer than I felt. "Let's get you guys out of the cold." I ushered them into the living room. Felt like an invasion, not a visit. My quiet sanctuary was gone, replaced by the clatter of suitcases' wheels on hardwood floors and the nervous energy of abandoned children. "Are you hungry?" I asked. "I'm fine," Nathan mumbled, dropping his bag by the sofa. "I want pancakes," Chloe whispered. "Okay, pancakes. I can do pancakes." I went into the kitchen, my hands shaking as I pulled out the flour and eggs. I needed a moment, just one moment to think. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and dialed Caleb. Straight to voicemail. I dialed again. Voicemail. I dialed a third time, my thumb pressing the screen so hard I thought the glass would crack. Finally, it connected. But it wasn't the ring of a standard call. It was the distinct sound of a call connecting over Wi-Fi. He was already at the airport lounge. "Josh, buddy." Caleb's voice came through, tinny and annoyed. "I'm sipping a mimosa. Don't kill the vibe." "Turn the car around," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "I am not doing this, Caleb. Not this time. You come get your children, or I'm taking them to Mom and Dad's." "Mom and Dad are in Florida for the month, you idiot. You know that," Caleb laughed. "Look, stop whining. You're single. You have that big house all to yourself. Sad, really. Having kids around will be good for you. Give you a sense of purpose." "My purpose is not cleaning up your messes," I shouted, making Lucas jump in the other room. I lowered my voice, turning my back to the kids. "Caleb, this is abandonment. You can't just leave 3 minors on a porch and fly to another continent." "It's not abandonment, it's babysitting," he snapped. "And don't use legal words with me. You're a gardener, Josh. Stick to plants. I'll be back in a few weeks. If you need money, ask Mom. She has the checkbook." "I don't want your money. I want you to be a father." "I am providing for them," he yelled back, the background noise of clinking glasses audible. "I need this break. You don't know the pressure I'm under. Just handle it. If you ruin this trip for me, Josh, I swear to God, you'll regret it. Don't be the jealous little brother your whole life." The line went dead. I stared at the phone. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Jealous? He thought I was jealous? I looked around at my clean kitchen, my paid-off mortgage, my stable career. And then I thought about him, the leased cars, the failed businesses, the constant bailouts from our parents. I wasn't jealous. I was exhausted. I walked back into the living room. Chloe was sitting on the floor, pulling the stuffing out of a tear in her rabbit's ear. Lucas was staring blankly at the TV, which wasn't even on. Nathan was sitting on the edge of the sofa, head in his hands. They looked like refugees in their own family. I couldn't do this. Not because I didn't love them, I loved them fiercely. But because if I did this, if I accepted this behavior one more time, I was validating it. I was telling Caleb that his children were luggage he could put in storage whenever he wanted to live his bachelor fantasy. I looked at Nathan. "Did he tell you when he was coming back?" Nathan looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. He said he didn't know. He said not to wait up. That broke me. Not to wait up. I walked back to the kitchen counter. I looked at the magnets on my fridge. One of them was a contact number for emergency services I kept for work. I had 2 choices. Option A, I make pancakes. I resent every moment for 3 weeks. I let Caleb walk all over me again. I teach these kids that their father's neglect is acceptable and that I am nothing more than a doormat. Option B, the nuclear option. My hand hovered over the phone. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. If I made this call, there was no going back. It would destroy the family. Mom would never forgive me. Dad would disown me. But then I looked at Chloe again. She was 5. She shouldn't have to wonder if her dad was coming back for dinner. I dialed the number. Not 911, but the local Child Protective Services hotline. Department of Social Services. A woman's voice answered. "How can I help you?" I took a deep breath. "My name is Joshua. I need to report 3 abandoned minors. Their father just dropped them on my porch and left the country." "Sir, are you related to the children?" "I'm their uncle," I said, my voice trembling. And are you willing to take custody? I paused. This was the moment. The hardest thing I have ever had to say. No, I said, tears stinging my eyes. I am not. The silence after I hung up the phone was heavier than anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the suffocating quiet of a bomb that had been armed but hadn't yet detonated. I am not. Those 3 words echoed in my head. They felt cruel. They felt monstrous. But I knew, with a clarity that cut through the guilt, that saying yes would have been the real mistake. If I said yes, Caleb wins. If I said yes, this cycle continues until I am bankrupt and these kids are broken adults who think love is transactional. I went back to the living room. I couldn't look Nathan in the eye. I felt like a traitor, but I had to be the villain today to be the savior tomorrow. Who were you talking to? Nathan asked. He was sharp. Too sharp for 14. Just checking on some logistics. I lied. Hey guys, I need to check the bags. Did your dad leave any paperwork? Medical cards? Power of attorney? Anything? I knew the answer before I asked. Nathan shook his head, a bitter smirk twisting his young face. He threw the bags in the car 5 minutes before we left. Mom's barely even packed. It's just clothes. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Let's make those pancakes. As I mixed the batter, the rhythm of the whisk hitting the bowl brought back memories I had tried to suppress. This wasn't the first time. It was just the most extreme time. 3 years ago, it was the business trip to Miami. Caleb dropped Nathan and Lucas off at my old apartment on a Friday night, promising to be back Sunday morning. He didn't show up until Wednesday. I missed 3 days of work. My boss wrote me up. When Caleb finally returned, tanned and smelling of tequila, he laughed it off. Relax, Josh. You got to bond with the nephews. You should be paying me for the privilege. My parents, Robert and my mother, had sided with him. Joshua, don't be so stiff, my mother had said, her voice dripping with that passive-aggressive sweetness. Your brother is under so much stress trying to build his company. You're single. You have the time. Family helps family. Family helps family. That was the mantra that had shackled me for decades. But in our house, family meant Caleb, and help meant Joshua sacrifices everything. I flipped a pancake, sizzled loudly. Then there was the Christmas incident. Caleb was supposed to host. I arrived with gifts only to find the house dark. He had taken a last-minute ski trip with a girlfriend, not his wife, and left the dog locked in the garage. I spent Christmas Eve breaking a window to feed a golden retriever while Caleb posted photos of champagne on the slopes. I was the fixer, the safety net, the doormat. Uncle Josh. I snapped back to reality. Lucas was standing at the kitchen island, holding his switch. The Wi-Fi password isn't working. It's on the fridge, I said automatically. Can we stay here forever? He asked. I froze. The spatula hovered over the skillet. He didn't ask it with hope. He asked it with resignation, like he knew he was a parcel being shuffled between post offices. We'll figure it out, buddy, I said. Here, eat. I served them. They ate voraciously, like they hadn't had a proper meal since the morning. Maybe they hadn't. 40 minutes later, a plain gray sedan pulled into my driveway. Then a police cruiser pulled in behind it. The lights weren't flashing, but the presence was unmistakable. Nathan stood up, dropping his fork. Uncle Josh? Why are the cops here? I wiped my hands on a dish towel. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might pass out. Nathan, listen to me. Whatever happens, I need you to tell the truth. Okay, just the truth. You called them, Nathan whispered. The betrayal in his eyes was visceral, cut deeper than any insult Caleb could have thrown. You called the cops on us. Not on you, I pleaded, stepping toward him. On your dad. I'm trying to help you. By getting us arrested? No one is getting arrested. The doorbell rang. It was a sharp, authoritative sound. I opened the door. A woman in a navy blue blazer stood there, holding a clipboard. Behind her was a uniformed officer, looking bored but alert. Mr. Joshua Miller? The woman asked. Her face was kind but professional. The kind of face that had seen terrible things and learned to hide the reaction. Yes, I said. Come in. The next hour was a blur of humiliation and bureaucracy. The social worker, who introduced herself as Mrs. Miller, no relation, ironically, interviewed the kids separately in my dining room. I sat in the kitchen with the officer. You understand what happens if you refuse immediate placement? The officer asked, leaning against my granite countertop. They go into the system. Emergency foster care. It's not a hotel, buddy. I know, I said, gripping my coffee mug until my knuckles turned white. But if I take them now without a court order, without documentation, their father comes back in 3 weeks, takes them, and does this again. And again. I need it on record. I need him to face consequences. It's a bold strategy, the officer muttered, using the kids as leverage against the dad. I'm not using them, I snapped, my temper flaring. I am protecting them from a man who treats them like accessories. He left the country, with no return ticket. Who does that? The officer shrugged. You'd be surprised. Mrs. Miller walked back into the kitchen. Her expression was grim. Nathan confirmed the story, she said. He has a recording on his phone of his father leaving. It's clear evidence of abandonment. What happens now? I asked. We take them into emergency protective custody, she said. Since you are refusing placement as a kinship caregiver at this moment, I'm refusing informal placement, I corrected. I want to file for legal custody, real custody, but I need you to document that they were abandoned first. She nodded slowly. She understood. Okay, we take them to the intake center. We file the report. You can petition the family court tomorrow morning for emergency foster placement. It's risky, Mr. Miller. If the judge doesn't like your tone, they could end up with a stranger. It's a risk I have to take, I said. Watching them leave was the hardest moment of my life. Chloe was crying, clinging to my leg until Mrs. Miller gently peeled her away. Lucas was silent, eyes wide. Nathan wouldn't look at me. He walked out to the social worker's car with his head down, hood up. As the car drove away, leaving me alone in my silent, empty house, I fell to my knees on the hardwood floor. I sobbed. I sobbed for the fear in Chloe's eyes. I sobbed for the hatred in Nathan's. But then I stood up. I wiped my face. I went to my office and pulled out a fresh legal pad. I wrote down the date, the time, and every single word Caleb had said to me. I was done being the brother. It was time to be the enemy. The storm didn't hit immediately. It took about 3 hours for the ripples to cross the Atlantic Ocean and bounce off the satellites back to Florida. I was sitting at my dining table, surrounded by my financial records and a list of family law attorneys, when my phone vibrated. It buzzed across the wood, an angry, persistent sound. Dad. I stared at the screen. I knew exactly how this conversation would go. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but I needed to set the boundary now. I needed them to know the old Joshua was dead. I swiped green. Hello, Dad. Have you lost your mind? Robert Miller didn't do pleasantries. His voice was a boom of authoritarian judgment. I just got a call from Caleb. He's frantic. He says you're refusing to let the kids in the house, that you're making them sit on the curb. That's a lie, I said calmly. My pulse was racing, but my voice was steady. He abandoned them, Dad. He dropped them off and flew to Paris. He told us about the trip, Dad shouted. He needed a break. We approved it. We told him to drop them with you. We knew you'd handle it. You approved it? I stood up, pacing the room. You approved him leaving his children for 3 weeks to go spend money he doesn't have? Did you ask me? No. You just assumed the spare heir would pick up the slack. Don't start with that victim complex, Dad spat. You have a big house. You have no wife, no kids. What else are you doing with your time? Growing hydrangeas? Your brother is building an empire. He needs support, not sabotage. He's not building an empire, Dad. He's drowning in debt. And I didn't make them sit on the curb. I called CPS. There was silence on the other end. A long, stunned silence. You did what? I called Child Protective Services. They are in emergency custody. I am filing for guardianship tomorrow. You traitor, Dad whispered. The venom in his voice was palpable. You called the government on your own blood? Do you know what this does to our reputation? To Caleb's business. I don't care about his business. I yelled back, finally losing my cool. I care about Nathan, who thinks his father hates him. I care about Chloe, who doesn't know where her next meal is coming from. If you want to help them, get on a plane and come get them. Oh wait, you're in Florida golfing. Fix this, Dad threatened. You call them back. You tell them it was a misunderstanding. You go get those kids, or so help me God, Joshua, you are out of this family. I will cut you off from everything. You can't cut me off, I said, a cold realization washing over me. I make my own money. I own my own house. I don't need you. And frankly, I don't think I want you. I hung up. Then I blocked his number. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in my life, I felt free. But Caleb wasn't done. 10 minutes later, my phone pinged with a notification. It was Facebook, then Instagram, then a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. I opened Facebook. There it was. A post from Caleb Miller, tagged at Charles de Gaulle Airport. The photo showed him looking distressed, hand on his forehead, with a caption that made my blood boil. Please pray for my family. I planned a surprise trip for my kids. Asked my brother Joshua to watch them for a few hours while I sorted out the logistics, and he called the police on me. He's holding my children hostage emotionally, refusing to let them in his house because he wants money. I'm trying to get a flight back, but I'm devastated. How can family be so cruel? The comments were already pouring in. OMG Caleb, that's horrible. I always knew your brother was weird. Call the cops on him. Stay strong. Bro, jealousy is an ugly disease. He was spinning the narrative. He was painting me as the villain before I could even open my mouth. I needed a lawyer, not a family friend. A shark. I called Andrew. Andrew was my college roommate, now a high-stakes divorce and custody attorney. He knew my family dynamics better than anyone. Josh, Andrew answered on the first ring. I saw the post. Please tell me you didn't actually lock the kids out. I called CPS, Andrew. They took them. Good, Andrew said immediately. That's the best thing you could have done. Creates a paper trail. If you had just taken them in, it would be he said, she said. Now it's a state matter. Dad threatened to disown me. Let him. Listen, Josh. I did some digging as soon as I saw Caleb's post. I have access to some property databases. And, Josh, Caleb didn't just go on vacation. His house, the one in the gated community, is listed for rent. Long-term lease. Available immediately. I stopped breathing. What? And I checked the flight manifests. Don't ask me how. He's on a one-way ticket to Paris with a connecting flight to Morocco. Morocco doesn't have the same extradition treaties for civil disputes. He wasn't coming back, I whispered. He was dumping them. Permanently. Exactly, Andrew said, his voice grim. He was liquidating his life and leaving the baggage with you. This isn't abandonment, Josh. This is a carefully calculated exit strategy. We need to lock down everything. Do you have access to the kids' trust funds? The ones your grandparents set up? Mom and Dad are the trustees, I said. Why? Because if Caleb is running, he needs cash. You need to check those accounts. Now. Night had fallen. My house felt like a fortress under siege. Every car that drove past made me jump. I had spent the last hour reading comments on Caleb's post, watching strangers dissect my character based on the lies of a narcissist. I was in the kitchen, making a sandwich I knew I wouldn't eat, when the red and blue lights flashed through the front window. This time there was no polite knock. Bam, bam, bam. Police! Open the door! I rushed to the door, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I unlocked it and swung it open. 3 officers stood there. hands on their holsters, not drawn but ready. Behind them, the neighbors were peering out from behind their curtains. "Joshua Miller?" the lead officer barked. He was a large man with a buzz cut and eyes that held zero sympathy. "Yes," I said, raising my hands instinctively. "I'm Joshua. What's going on?" "We have a warrant to search the premises," he said, shoving a piece of paper toward my chest. "And we need you to answer some questions regarding the whereabouts of Nathan, Lucas, and Chloe Miller." "They're with CPS," I stammered, confused. "I called them this morning. Officer Davis was here. You can check the logs." "We checked the logs," the officer said, stepping into my foyer, forcing me to back up. "We know CPS took them, but we just received a call from their father in Paris claiming that you demanded $50,000 in exchange for their safety prior to calling CPS. He claims you sent him a threatening text message." "That's insane," I shouted. "I never asked for money." "He's lying." "He provided a screenshot of the text, sir," the officer said, his voice cold. My blood ran cold. A screenshot? Caleb could Photoshop anything. Or maybe he had used a spoofing app. "I want to see it," I demanded. "You'll see it at the station if we decide to bring you in. Right now, we need to search your home for any evidence of extortion. Computers, phones. Hand them over." "This is retaliation," I yelled as another officer moved past me toward my office. "He's doing this because I called CPS. You have to listen to me. He has a one-way ticket to Morocco. He sold his house." "Sir, calm down or I will cuff you for obstruction," the lead officer warned. I stood there, shaking with rage and impotence, as they tore through my sanctuary. They took my laptop. They took my iPad. They took the notepad where I had written down the details of the morning. Felt like a violation. It was a violation. "Officer," I said, trying to lower my voice, trying to sound like the rational professional I was. "Think about this. If I was trying to extort him, why would I be the one to call the police first? Why would I hand the leverage over to the state?" The officer paused. He looked at me. For a second, just a second, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. It was the first crack in Caleb's armor. "Criminals make mistakes," he said, but his tone was less aggressive. "Maybe you panicked. Or maybe," I said, leaning in, "my brother is a sociopath who is trying to discredit the only witness to his crime." The officer stared at me. "We're going to need you to come down to the station for a formal statement. You're not under arrest yet, but you need to clear this up." "I'll come," I said, "but I'm calling my lawyer first." I grabbed my phone, the only device they hadn't seized yet, and dialed Andrew. "Andrew," I said, my voice breaking. "They're here." He accused me of extortion. "I know," Andrew said, his voice tight. "I'm already at the precinct. I beat them there." "Josh, listen to me carefully. Don't say a word in the car. Not about the weather, not about sports. Silence. I'll meet you in interrogation room B." The ride to the station was a blur of neon lights and nausea. I sat in the back of the cruiser, not handcuffed but feeling like a prisoner. I looked out the window at my town, the town where I designed parks and gardens, the town where I was a respected citizen. Now I felt like a pariah. When we arrived, they walked me past the front desk. I saw a local reporter standing there, talking to the sergeant. Caleb had called the press. Of course he had. I kept my head down. Inside the interrogation room, the air was stale and smelled of old coffee. Andrew walked in 5 minutes later, looking like a warrior in a three-piece suit. "Okay," Andrew said, slamming a file onto the metal table. "This is a mess, but it's a fixable mess. The text Caleb showed them came from a burner number. They can't trace it to you. But they think it's me," I said. "They have to investigate." "But here's the kicker, Josh. The text was sent at 10 a.m. When were you on the phone with the CPS hotline?" "Around 10:15, I said. "And before that?" "I was arguing with Caleb on the phone." "Exactly. Phone records will show you were on a voice call with him at the exact moment the text was supposedly sent. Unless you can text with your toes while screaming at your brother, it's physically impossible. Thank God, I exhaled. But that's not the big problem, Andrew said, his face darkening. The big problem is the custody hearing tomorrow morning. Your parents are flying back tonight. Private jet. They're going to testify. Testify what? That you are unstable. That you have a history of jealousy. They are going to try to get emergency custody of the kids to keep them out of foster care, and then they are going to hand them right back to Caleb once he clears his name and returns. He's not returning. They don't know that, or they don't care. Josh, if your parents get those kids, they will disappear. Caleb will take them to Morocco, and you will never see them again. I slammed my fist on the table. I won't let that happen. What do? We need a nuke, Andrew said. We need something that proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Caleb intended to abandon them. Not just a vacation gone wrong. Malicious abandonment. I don't have that, I said, defeated. I just have his word against mine. Maybe you don't, Andrew said, a strange look in his eye. But maybe someone else does. Who? Nathan, Andrew said. The social worker, Mrs. Miller, called me. Nathan has been asking to speak to you. He says he has something. Something he was too scared to show the police at the house. What is it? She wouldn't say over the phone, but she's bringing him to the hearing tomorrow. Josh, whatever that kid has, it's our only shot. The family court building was a depressing monolith of gray concrete and fluorescent lights. It smelled of floor wax and despair. I sat on a wooden bench outside courtroom 304, Andrew by my side. My suit felt too tight. I hadn't slept in 24 hours. Down the hall I saw them, my parents, Robert and Lorraine Miller. They looked immaculate. My father in his tailored suit, my mother in her pearls and silk. They didn't look like grandparents in crisis. They looked like royalty visiting a plague ward. They were flanked by a high-priced lawyer I recognized from the country club. When they saw me, the temperature in the hallway dropped 10 degrees. My mother walked straight up to me. I stood up, expecting a hug or a slap. I got neither. You have broken my heart, Joshua, she said, her voice trembling with a theatrical sadness. How could you? Your brother is distraught. He's trying to get a flight back right now. He's lying, Mom, I said, my voice tired. He's not coming back. Stop it, she hissed. Stop trying to ruin him. We are going to fix this. We are taking the children. And you need professional help. I need help. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You enabled a monster for 40 years. And you think I need help? Mr. Miller? Their lawyer stepped in, physically blocking me from my mother. I suggest you save your arguments for the judge. We filed into the courtroom. It was small, intimate, and terrifying. The judge, Honorable Sarah Vance, looked over her glasses at the file. She looked exhausted. This is an emergency hearing regarding the temporary placement of Nathan, Lucas, and Chloe Miller, she announced. I have a petition from the state alleging abandonment. I have a counterpetition from the grandparents seeking immediate custody. And I have Mr. Joshua Miller, present as an interested party. Yes, Your Honor. Andrew stood up. We are here to advocate for the truth and the safety of the children. The proceedings were brutal. My parents' lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a loving father, Caleb, who was the victim of a miscommunication and a vindictive brother. He presented affidavits from neighbors who barely knew us, stating that I was a loner and difficult. Then my father took the stand. Joshua has always been troubled. Dad lied under oath, not looking at me. He's never forgiven Caleb for being more successful. We believe he fabricated this emergency to hurt his brother. We are willing and able to take the children immediately. I sat there, gripping the edge of the table. My own father. Perjury. Just to protect the golden child. Thank you, Mr. Miller, the judge said. She turned to the CPS attorney. Does the state have a position? Your Honor, the CPS attorney said. We have serious concerns about the father's whereabouts. However, the grandparents are fit guardians on paper. Our primary concern is the stability of the children. It was slipping away. I could feel it. The judge was going to give them to my parents. My parents would hand them to Caleb or fly them to him, and they would be gone. Your Honor, Andrew said, standing up. Before you rule, we ask to hear from one more witness. A witness the state has brought today. The judge frowned. This is highly irregular. Who? Nathan Miller, Andrew said. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Mrs. Miller, the social worker, walked in. Beside her walked Nathan. He looked small. He was wearing the same hoodie from yesterday, but his head was up. He looked at me, and for the first time, there was no anger in his eyes, only a terrifying resolve. I will allow it, the judge said, intrigued. Young man, come to the stand. You don't have to be sworn in. Just tell the truth. Nathan sat in the big leather chair. He looked at his grandparents. My mother gave him a sharp, warning look, the kind that used to make me freeze as a child. Nathan ignored her. Nathan, the judge asked gently, do you know where your father is? He's in Paris, Nathan said. His voice cracked, then he cleared his throat. But he's not coming back. Objection, my parents' lawyer shouted. Hearsay. Overruled, the judge snapped. Why do you say that, Nathan? Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a cracked iPhone. Because I heard him talking to his girlfriend, Jessica, before we left the house. He thought I was in the car already, but I was in the kitchen getting my charger. And what did he say? I recorded it, Nathan said. Because he lies a lot, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy. The courtroom went dead silent. May I approach? Andrew asked. He took the phone from Nathan and plugged it into the courtroom's AV system. Play it, the judge ordered. Static filled the room. Then, the unmistakable voice of Caleb Miller boomed through the speakers. Yeah, babe, I'm almost done packing them up. God, they are so heavy. Literally. I can't wait to be free of them. A female voice, Jessica, are you sure your brother will take them? What if he says no? Caleb's voice. He won't say no. He's a coward. He'll bitch and moan, but he'll do it. And by the time he realizes I'm not coming back, we'll be settled in Morocco. I'm leaving the burner phone in the trash at the airport. No one can track us. Jessica, what about your parents? Caleb, the old fools? I already got them to sign the release on the kids' trust funds. Told them it was for international school tuition. We have the cash, babe. 2 million liquid. We are ghosting this life. I'm finally going to be happy. The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. I looked at my parents. My father's face was ashen. He looked like he was having a stroke. My mother had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. They had been played. They weren't co-conspirators. They were victims too. He had stolen from them to fund his escape. Oh my God! My mother whispered. The judge's face was stone cold. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by fury. Is that recording verified? She asked the CPS worker. Yes, Your Honor. Metadata confirms date and time. The judge slammed her gavel down. It sounded like a gunshot. The petition for custody by the grandparents is denied with prejudice, she declared. This court finds credible evidence of abandonment, fraud, and flight risk. I am issuing a bench warrant for the arrest of Caleb Miller immediately. Alert the FAA and Interpol. She turned her gaze to me. Mr. Joshua Miller, are you willing to accept temporary guardianship of these children, effective immediately, under the supervision of the court? I stood up. I looked at Nathan. He was crying silently in the witness chair. I looked at my parents, who were slumped in their seats, broken figures of their own making. Yes, Your Honor, I said, my voice ringing clear and strong. I am. The moment the gavel fell, the energy in the room shifted from tension to chaos. Bailiffs were moving, lawyers were packing briefcases with frantic urgency, and the CPS worker was moving toward Nathan to comfort him. But the real drama was happening at the table to my left. My father, Robert Miller, the man who had ruled our family with an iron fist and a checkbook, was trying to stand up, but his legs wouldn't support him. He slumped back into his chair, clutching his chest. He took it. Dad wheezed, looking at Mom. The trust, the retirement accounts. I gave him access. He said he needed it to show proof of funds for the school. My mother was sobbing openly now, her mascara running down her face, ruining the facade of the perfect matriarch. He called me a fool, she wept. His own mother, an old fool. I felt a pang of pity, but it was quickly swamped by the realization of what this meant. Caleb hadn't just abandoned the kids. He had scorched the earth. He had stolen the children's future and my parents' past. I walked over to the witness stand. Nathan stood up. I didn't say anything. I just opened my arms. For a second, I thought he would pull away. He was 14, angry, and tough. But then he crumbled. He threw himself into my chest, burying his face in my suit jacket. He shook with violent sobs, the weight of holding that secret finally released. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." "You have nothing to be sorry for," I whispered fiercely, holding the back of his head. "You saved us, Nate. You saved everyone." "Mr. Miller," the judge called out. She was still on the bench, organizing papers. "You can take the children home. CPS will visit tomorrow for a home inspection. But I want to be clear. Do not let the grandparents near them until further notice. Is that understood?" "Understood, Your Honor," I said. My parents looked up at that. The shame in their eyes was absolute. They didn't argue. They didn't fight. They just sat there, two bankrupt people realizing their golden child was actually pyrite. We walked out of the courthouse. The air outside tasted different, cleaner. "Uncle Josh." I looked down. Andrew had brought Lucas and Chloe from the waiting room. They ran to me, grabbing my legs. "Are we going to jail?" Chloe asked, eyes wide. "No, sweetie," I said, picking her up. "We're going home. To my house. For a long time." "Did Daddy come back?" Lucas asked, looking around. I looked at Nathan. He shook his head. "No, bud," I said honestly. "Daddy didn't come back. But I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." We got into my car, my sensible, reliable SUV. As I buckled them in, my phone buzzed. It was Andrew. "Josh, don't go home yet. Come to my office. We need to talk about the warrant." "What warrant?" "The FBI is involved now. Since he crossed state lines and used wire transfers to steal the money, it's federal. They tracked his passport." "Did they catch him?" "He landed in Paris 2 hours ago," Andrew said, his voice grimly satisfied. "And guess who was waiting for him at the gate? The French authorities. Interpol flagged him the second the judge signed the order. He's in custody. He's caught." I breathed out, the tension in my shoulders finally releasing. "He's caught. And Josh, they found the money. Most of it. He hadn't had time to transfer it to the offshore accounts yet. The kid's trust is safe. Your parents' retirement. That's messy, eh? But we might be able to recover some of it." I hung up the phone and looked in the rearview mirror. Nathan was looking at me. "He's in jail, isn't he?" Nathan asked. "Yes," I said. Nathan nodded. He didn't smile. He just looked out the window. "Good." That night, my house was different. It wasn't the quiet sanctuary I used to prize. It was messy. There were shoes in the hallway. The TV was blaring cartoons. There was flour on the counter from the morning's pancakes. And I loved it. I ordered pizza, 5 large pies, way too much. We sat on the living room floor and ate. I let them stay up late. Around 10 p.m., my doorbell rang. I stiffened. Had my parents come to beg? I checked the peephole. It was an Uber Eats driver. But I hadn't ordered anything else. I opened the door. The driver handed me a box of high-end cupcakes from the bakery downtown. "Delivery for Joshua Miller," he said. I looked at the card attached. It was from Mrs. Miller, the social worker. "For the new dad. You did good today." CPS. I brought the cupcakes inside. As I watched the kids eating the frosting, laughing for the first time in days, I realized something profound. My parents had spent their whole lives investing in the wrong son. They thought Caleb was the future because he was flashy and loud. They thought I was the background character because I was steady and quiet. But when the fire came, the flash burned out, and the steady hand was the only one left holding the bucket. I wasn't just an uncle anymore. I was the guardian. I was the wall between these kids and the chaos. And for the first time in 34 years, I didn't feel like the spare heir. I felt like the king. The calendar on my wall says it has been exactly 365 days since I watched that black Porsche disappear down my driveway. 1 year. In the grand scheme of a life, a year is nothing. It's a blip. But this year was a lifetime. People think the happily ever after happens the moment the gavel bangs down. They think the movie ends when the villain gets handcuffed and the hero drives off into the sunset. But real life isn't a movie. The credits didn't roll when we walked out of that courtroom. That was just the end of the prologue. The real story, the story of rebuilding a family from the ashes, was just beginning. The first month was a blur of chaos and coffee. I went from being a man who organized his spice rack alphabetically to a man who considered it a victory if everyone was wearing matching socks. My quiet, curated bachelor pad was transformed into a war zone of backpacks, permission slips, and emotional landmines. The trauma didn't vanish just because Caleb was in a holding cell. It manifested in ways I wasn't prepared for. Chloe started wetting the bed. Every single night for 3 weeks. She would wake up screaming, terrified that she was alone in the house. I spent those nights sitting on the floor by her bed, holding her hand, whispering over and over, "I'm here. Uncle Josh is here. I'm not going anywhere." I learned to sleep with one eye open, attuned to the slightest whimper. Lucas went the other way. He went silent. He retreated into his video games, using the screen as a shield against a world that had rejected him. He wouldn't talk about his dad. He wouldn't talk about his mom, who had signed away her rights years ago and vanished into her own addiction struggles. He just tapped buttons, destroying digital monsters because the real monsters were too big to fight. And Nathan was the hardest. He carried the guilt of a grown man. He insisted on doing all the chores. He tried to parent his siblings. He watched me like a hawk, waiting for me to crack, waiting for me to realize that 3 kids were a burden and send them away. I remember one Tuesday night in November. It was raining. I was trying to cook dinner. Spaghetti, again, while on a conference call with a client who was screaming about a retaining wall. The dog was barking. Chloe was crying because she couldn't find her stuffed rabbit. The smoke detector went off because I burned the garlic bread. I slammed the phone down. I threw the burnt bread into the sink. The room went dead silent. The kids froze. Nathan stepped in front of Lucas and Chloe, his body tense, his eyes wide. He was protecting them. From me. That moment broke me more than the abandonment did. He thought I was going to explode. He thought I was Caleb. I took a deep breath. I walked over to the smoke detector and pulled the battery out. Then I sat down on the kitchen floor, right there in the middle of the mess. "I burned the bread," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm really bad at making garlic bread, guys." I looked up at Nathan. "I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at the noise. I'm just frustrated with the bread. Promise. I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to yell. I'm just tired." Nathan stared at me for a long time. Then, slowly, he sat down on the floor next to me. "Dad used to throw plates," Nathan whispered, "when he burned stuff." "I know," I said, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "I'm not your dad." "I know," Nathan said, and for the first time he leaned into me. That was the turning point. Not the court dates, not the money, but the burnt garlic bread. While we were fighting for normalcy at home, the legal war was raging outside. Andrew, my lawyer and savior, was dismantling Caleb's life with the precision of a surgeon. Caleb's trial was a media circus. The Porsche dad who abandoned his kids for Paris was headline news. I shielded the kids from it as best I could. I blocked certain channels. I put filters on the internet. But I had to go. I had to be there. Sitting in that federal courtroom, watching my brother shuffle in wearing an orange jumpsuit, was surreal. He didn't look like the golden boy anymore. His tan was gone. His hair was thinning. He looked small. He tried to catch my eye. He tried to give me that old, charming smirk. The one that said, "Come on, Josh. Get me out of this." I didn't smile back. I looked right through him. The prosecutor laid it all out. The wire fraud. The embezzlement from the college fund. The false police report. The abandonment. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a calculated demolition of his responsibilities. But the worst part wasn't Caleb. It was our parents. Robert and Lorraine sat in the back row, huddled together like refugees. They looked 20 years older. The investigation had revealed that they weren't just victims of Caleb's theft. They were enablers of the highest order. They had signed documents without reading them. They had lied to the police to cover for him. They weren't charged criminally. Andrew said it was because they were deemed senile and manipulated by the court of public opinion. But their punishment was far worse than prison. They lost their reputation. They lost their friends. And they lost their money. Caleb had drained them dry. The retirement accounts, the equity in their house, the liquid savings. It was all gone. Spent on first-class tickets, luxury rentals, and debts he had racked up over years of living a lie. I watched my father, a man who used to terrify me with a single glance, trembling as he listened to the list of assets being seized. His legacy was gone. When the judge asked if I wanted to give a victim impact statement, I stood up. I walked to the podium. I didn't have a prepared speech. I just spoke the truth. My brother didn't just leave his children on a porch, I told the court. He taught them that love is conditional. He taught them that they were luggage to be stored or discarded based on his convenience. I am not asking for vengeance. I am asking for safety. I am asking you to ensure that he can never, ever do this to them again. The judge sentenced Caleb to 8 years in federal prison for wire fraud and child endangerment. He was ordered to pay restitution, though we all knew he didn't have a dime. As they led him away, Caleb finally broke. He didn't scream at the judge. He screamed at me. "You stole my life, Josh. You stole my kids. You're a thief." I watched him go. I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just relief. The boogeyman was locked away. The fallout for my parents was swift and brutal. With their finances decimated, they couldn't afford their country club estate. The bank foreclosed 3 months after the trial. I heard about it from a cousin. They were moving into a small, one-bedroom assisted living apartment on the other side of the state. It was a state-funded facility, the kind of place my father used to make fun of. They called me the day they moved. I saw Mom on the caller ID. I stared at the phone. I thought about answering. I thought about hearing her apologize or beg or blame me. Then I looked out the window. Lucas was in the yard, throwing a baseball for the dog. Chloe was drawing with sidewalk chalk on the driveway. Nathan was washing my car. I declined the call. I didn't block them this time. I just didn't answer. I realized I didn't need their closure. My closure was the peace in my backyard. That spring, I made a decision that felt like the final nail in the coffin of my old life. I sold my sedan. It wasn't big enough for 3 growing kids and hockey gear and dance recitals. I took the kids to the dealership. "Get a Porsche," Lucas yelled, pointing at a sports car in the showroom. I froze. The image of the black Cayenne flashed in my mind, the symbol of Caleb's selfishness. "No," I said firmly. "No Porsches. We're getting something better." We bought a minivan, a top-of-the-line, safety-rated, uncool, practical minivan. It had automatic sliding doors. It had DVD players in the headrests. It had 17 cup holders. Caleb would have rather died than be seen in it. I loved it. Driving that van off the lot, with 3 kids arguing over which movie to watch, I felt a surge of pride that no sports car could ever give me. This was a vehicle of service. It was a vehicle of presence. It was a promise that I was there to haul them, protect them, and drive them wherever they needed to go. The adoption went through 6 months later. It was a formality, really, Caleb's rights were terminated due to his incarceration and the severity of the abandonment. The mother was nowhere to be found. We stood in the same courtroom, but this time, the vibe was different. There were balloons. Andrew was there, grinning like an idiot. Mrs. Miller, the social worker who had brought cupcakes that first night, was wiping tears from her eyes. The judge, a different one this time, smiled at us. "Mr. Miller, do you understand that by adopting Nathan, Lucas, and Chloe, you are accepting full legal and financial responsibility for them? That they will be your children in the eyes of the law, indistinguishable from biological offspring?" "I do," I said. "And do you, Nathan, Lucas, Chloe, agree to this adoption?" Chloe screamed, "Yes," and jumped up and down. Lucas nodded vigorously. Nathan stood up. He looked at me. He was taller now. His shoulders were broader. The haunted look was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. "I agree," Nathan said. Then he paused. "Can I change my name?" I blinked. "You don't have to change your name, Nate. You're a Miller." "I'm a Miller." "I know," he said. "But I want to change my middle name. It's Caleb. I want to change it to Joshua." The air left my lungs. I tried to speak, but my voice failed me. I just nodded. The judge wiped her eye. "So ordered. Nathan Joshua Miller." We went out for pizza afterward. The same pizza place we ordered from that first terrifying night. But this time we weren't eating on the floor in silence. We were loud. We were laughing. I was pulling cheese off Chloe's hair. "Hey, Dad," Lucas said, reaching for a slice. He didn't even notice he said it. I froze. Nathan froze. We both looked at Lucas. "What?" Lucas asked, mouth full. "Pass the Parmesan." I passed the Parmesan. "Here you go, son." Felt natural. Felt right. My career changed too. I stopped taking every client who called. I fired the ones who stressed me out. I realized that time was more valuable than money. I needed to be at soccer games. I needed to be at parent-teacher conferences. I used the salary increase I got from a promotion, which I earned because I was more focused and grounded than ever, to rebuild the college funds that Caleb had stolen. I put every spare cent into accounts that only I could access, locked down tight by Andrew's firm. I wasn't rich in the way Caleb wanted to be. I didn't have a yacht or a villa in France, but I had a home that was full. One afternoon, I was cleaning out the attic, making room for stored winter clothes. I found an old box of family photos. My parents, Caleb, me. I sat there for a long time looking at a picture of us on a beach when we were kids. Caleb was front and center, smiling, holding a trophy. I was in the background, building a sandcastle. My parents were looking at Caleb. I used to hate that photo. It used to make me feel small. Now I looked at it and felt pity. They had bet on the flash. They chased the shiny object. And in doing so, they missed the solid ground. I realized that I wasn't the spare anymore. I was the foundation. And foundations don't need to be flashy. They just need to be strong. I put the photo back in the box and taped it shut. Then I wrote "Old Life" on the side in permanent marker and shoved it into the deepest corner of the attic. I walked downstairs. Nathan was helping Lucas with his math homework. Chloe was reading to the dog. This was my inheritance. Not the money my parents lost. Not the reputation they destroyed. This chaos. This love. I walked into the kitchen and started making dinner. I didn't burn the garlic bread this time. The sun is setting over the backyard again, casting long golden shadows across the lawn that I finally had time to resod last month. It's the same porch where I stood paralyzed a year ago, watching my brother drive away. But the silence is gone. The air is filled with the sound of a basketball bouncing on the driveway. Nathan is teaching Lucas how to shoot a layup. Chloe is singing a song she learned at kindergarten. Something about a frog in a well. Completely off-key and absolutely beautiful. I am sitting here with my coffee. Decaf now, because who needs the adrenaline when you have 3 kids? And I am reflecting on the journey that brought us here. When this started, I thought my life was over. I thought my freedom had been stolen. I mourned the loss of my quiet Sundays, my disposable income, my ability to travel on a whim. I felt like a victim. I felt like the universe was punishing me for being the responsible one. But I was wrong. The universe wasn't punishing me. It was promoting me. It was giving me a chance to break a cycle that had been rotting my family tree for generations. The cycle of narcissism, of enabling, of valuing image over substance. My parents created a monster in Caleb because they never told him no. They never let him feel the weight of a consequence. They protected him from the world until the world finally snapped back. I had to be the one to say no. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Calling CPS wasn't just a phone call. It was an amputation. I had to cut off the limb to save the body. I had to accept that being the bad guy in my parents' story was the only way to be the hero in Nathan's. I look at Nathan now. He's laughing. He missed the shot, but he's laughing. A year ago, he would have sulked. He would have been terrified of failure because his father demanded perfection. Now, he knows that missing a shot doesn't mean you're worthless. It just means you try again. That is the legacy I am building. Not wealth, not fame, but resilience. I received a letter from prison last week. It was from Caleb. It was 3 pages of excuses. He blamed his business partners. He blamed the economy. He blamed Jessica, the girlfriend, saying she led him astray. He blamed me for overreacting. He asked for money for the commissary. I didn't burn the letter. I didn't tear it up. I filed it in a folder marked evidence. I didn't reply. I don't hate him anymore. Hate requires energy. I just feel a profound indifference. He is a ghost. A cautionary tale that I will use to teach my children about the dangers of selfishness. Andrew came over for a barbecue yesterday. He watched the kids playing and handed me a beer. You know, Andrew said, leaning back in the patio chair, we beat the odds. Statistically, kinship adoptions with this level of family trauma, they usually fall apart. The uncle gives up. The kids act out. It ends in foster care. We're not a statistic, I said. No, Andrew smiled. You're a family, a real one. You know, your dad called my office again. I stiffened. What did he want? He wanted to know if there was any way to undo the custody agreement. He said they are lonely in the facility. What did you tell him? I told him that the only way he sees those kids is if he invents a time machine and raises a better son 40 years ago. I laughed. Felt good to laugh about them. The fear was gone. They were just sad old people who made bad choices. I pity them, but I will never expose my children to their toxicity again. That door is welded shut. I stand up and walk to the edge of the porch. Hey! I yell out to the driveway. Pizza's here in 20 minutes. Wash up. Okay, Dad. Lucas yells back. Got it, Dad. Nathan echoes. That word. That. It doesn't mean biology. Biology is just a biological process. It's a DNA sequence. Any fool can pass on DNA. Caleb proved that. Being a dad is a verb. It's an action. It's showing up. It's making the pancakes. It's enduring the tantrums. It's going to the court hearings. It's standing between the child and the monster and saying, you have to go through me. I didn't birth these children, but I saved them. And in a way, they saved me. They saved me from a lonely, selfish life. They saved me from becoming bitter. They gave me a reason to build something that lasts. I walk back inside my house. It's messy. There are toys on the floor. The lawyer bills are paid. The college fund is growing. The funeral of my past life is over. I am Joshua Miller. I am a father. And for the first time in my life, I am exactly where I am supposed to be. This story isn't just about a vacation gone wrong or a dramatic court battle. It is a fundamental lesson about boundaries and responsibility. Many of us are raised with the toxic belief that family is everything, and that we must tolerate abuse, neglect, or exploitation simply because we share DNA. We are taught to be the fixers, the peacekeepers, the ones who absorb the damage to keep the boat steady. But as my journey showed, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let the boat sink. Enabling is not love. Protecting someone from the consequences of their actions is not love. When I called CPS, it felt like a betrayal, but it was actually an act of supreme protection for the innocent victims, the children. If you are in a situation where you are being drained, financially, emotionally, or physically, by a family member who refuses to take responsibility for their life, remember this: you have the right to say no. You have the right to protect your peace. You have the right to redefine what family means to you. The golden child dynamic destroys families, but the scapegoat or the fixer has the power to break the chain. It requires courage. It requires facing the fear of being the bad guy. But on the other side of that fear is freedom. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member to save yourself or others? Was there a moment where you realized enough is enough? Or, if this story resonated with you and you support the decision to prioritize the children's safety over the brother's reputation, please simply comment the word "good" below. Seeing that word tells me that you stand for responsibility, for protection, and for the courage to do the right thing, even when it hurts. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for walking this path with me. You are appreciated.